Unlike our previous moderator, Mr. Rachit Patel, it's only my second time in RLS, but I can say that I have a 50-50 mix of having attended it virtually as well as physically. So that's at least a good percentage in both the modes. I wanted to set up some context and then maybe move on to my panelists to introduce themselves and maybe talk about their priorities for 2021 as against 2020. I'm Saurabh Mohan, part of the enterprise sales team in C2FO. C2FO is the world's largest marketplace in the space of working capital. We work with many retailers, and in fact, retail as a segment is very close to our heart because our first customer about 10 years back in the US was a large US retailer, and we continue to grow from strength to strength in the retail vertical, working with many large retailers and their supplier partners across India and the world. Last year, and I think we have had many sessions with RAI as well as with various panels yesterday and today about what COVID did to businesses and to the way the societies function. From a finance leader's perspective, the last 5 years have anyways changed the way finance leaders look at business, look at maintaining the various levers that they need to manage to, and from a perspective of only being a financial role, it's actually become a more strategic role. Last year actually made that role tougher in terms of finance leaders having to balance a stoppage of business, capital, liquidity concerns, cash flow, unknown facts about cash flow. And I am an optimist, and I believe that while those challenges have been managed well by our retailers, and we had a very phenomenal festive season, and we see a lot of those companies coming back to consolidation and now growth in this year, I believe that this is going to be a year where the learnings from last year are going to create a huge difference in the way retail sector works with its supplier partners, works with the distribution channels, and also touches the consumers. So I would hand over to my panelists to just introduce themselves and talk about what are the key priorities for 2021 against 2020. And if there is something that they feel is an additional focus for this year, we'll be happy to hear that. So maybe I can start with Mr. Arun Ganapathy.
This is Arun Ganapathy. I am the CFO of House of Anita Dongre. The priorities for 2021 would be, I would say, more or less in continuance with the priorities for 2020. And 2020, as Saurav rightly said, you start off with the liquidity, which was the major crisis for us. And with the liquidity, always, there was a focus on reducing the costs. Where all the costs control measures, I would not call reduction, maybe a cost control measures that we could do, and where we could save every penny. And I think when we go to 2021, one of the things is that obviously there's going to be a bit of growth, and the business is going to grow compared to what we saw in 2020. But I think as a CFO, maybe I would still ensure that the cost measures that I had implemented in the last year will continue. Maybe don't allow it to go back to those levels, because we have been frugal in the spends and still were able to manage the costs. So I think we'll continue with that focus in 2021 as well, along with 2020. So that is one bit on the cost measure. The second thing is also, there's going to be a bit of growth which is going to happen. So we had seen the pent-up growth and everything is happening, but now with the market opening up, there's going to be a growth. So there has to be a balancing between the liquidity, profitability and growth. So in my priority, it is going to be the order in which I said, I think liquidity is going to be first, so that to ensure that, we are back to the levels where we were pre-COVID, ensure that there's some liquidity in the system and we are able to manage the day-to-day operations, and then get into the profitability, because obviously 2020 has been a year where there has been a washout year for almost all retailers. And so 2021, you bring in the profitability. Obviously, there's going to be a growth element. It's also going to be there. So the balancing of profitability and growth is going to be the priority for 2021.
Thanks, Arun, for that insight. Next, can I request Mr. Karunakaran to introduce himself and also share his priorities for this year as vis-a-vis last year?
Hey, thanks a lot. I mean, if someone can switch on the video, I'm unable to do it at my end. I'm sorry about that. Okay. Hey, I think there is. I am unable to switch on the video. That's okay. I think Arun said it all. There is nothing to add. I mean, last year, when the pandemic started, We weren't even aware how long the pandemic is going to be there. It's going to be there for 2 months or 3 months, and it keep on extending. So to that extent, some of the key priorities that we had last year was liquidity, cost savings, and how do we preserve the cash. And one, and I'm sure most of the retailers we did quite well, was on the e-com. Last year we started probably doubling up, tripling up, or sometimes even more than that on the e-com and e-commerce strategy, and we did extremely well last year. So these are some of the priorities we had last year. And going to 2021, one, how do we get the customers back? That's going to be very, very important, particularly for the offline retailers where the customer footfall is still not reached the FY20 levels. So how do we get the customers back? What are the things we have to do to get the customers back? That's one. Second, again, I just endorse what Arun said. Cost savings and liquidity, that's going to be the key priority. Though we did a good job, I mean, how do we sustain and take it forward to the 2021, because the uncertainty still continues. Third one, we have grown the e-commerce quite well in 2021. How do we take the next leap in 2021-22? That's going to be quite critical. It used to contribute anywhere between 1 to 2% for most of the retailers. That has gone up to 5 to 7% right now. And way forward, if I have to take it to anywhere between 15 to 20% and take it further up, that's a key one. And I think, again, all of us are working towards it. And the last one, of course, this year, some of them made profits, some of them did not make profits at the bottom line. Next year, how do we ensure that with all the savings, with all the cost savings and Omni and so many other things what we did, how do we turn profitable for next year, which is close to FY20 or slightly more than that? So these are the 3 or 4 priorities we have, Saurabh.
Thanks, sir. Next, maybe we could have Vidya introduce herself and then talk about some of these priorities in line with what the other speakers spoke.
Hi, I'm Vidya, and as mentioned earlier, I'm CFO of Bata. And I think I'm really going to kind of continue the messages that the last 2 speakers have mentioned. So obviously, last year, all of us hit the brakes quite hard and, adopted a fairly lean method of operations. And I think that has served us and our organizations well. I think I grew up in Chennai, so but anybody in any crowded city will resonate. When you drive a scooter there, you start now releasing the brakes a little by little. But so the cautious optimism is how I'd like to kind of characterize 2021. So really, there are many projects that have got summarily stopped last year. I think that those projects are now kind of getting evaluated. And I think we are, at least based on my discussions with other CFOs as well, we're not necessarily greenlighting them, but I think we are being cautiously optimistic that we could greenlight a few of those projects. I think that's the stage that all of us have arrived at. And hopefully, the conditions in the country will allow us to kind of open up the brakes fully.
Thank you. Maybe next, if Arun Kumar Nath could introduce himself and take us through some of the priorities and focus areas for this year.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Arun Kumar. I'm the CFO of Levi Strauss & Company for South Asia, Middle East, and North Africa. And thank you for having me here. Firstly, if I were to look at what happened in 2020, it was largely 2 priorities that sort of where we spend a lot of our time. First was on ensuring that we don't run out of liquidity to conserve cash. That was a key priority that was there in front of us last year. Second was the working capital management, essentially looking at everything that goes into working capital and make sure that you're able to come out clean and are able to navigate that year well till the time the COVID existed. So I think that was these were two critical things that we focused on last year. And if I were to look at what would be the changes that I'm going to see in 2021, firstly, I would like to look at what changes are happening at the marketplace. So obviously, we hear and we see that there are many changes, especially happening on the consumer front. The behavior of what is that the consumer is expecting, where he would like to shop, how he would like to shop, and what is that he's expecting, and what's the kind of experience that he is looking at. So a lot of investments, time and investments will go behind making sure that we are able to cater to the new requirements and the new expectations of this consumers who are going to be shopping from us. So that's one important priority for us. Second is to clearly look at what are the changes that we would see even on the product front. So obviously this COVID has resulted in certain kinds of changes from a product standpoint as to what is that this new consumer is preferring and how is it that he is expecting the products to sort of cater to his requirements. Multiple changes in behavior, socioeconomic front, work from home. There are many, many things that are happening. So all these are having an important impact on how customer is going to shop and what is that he's going to shop. So this is the other important priority for us in terms of looking at what is that the consumer would want on the product front and seeing that how do we cater to that. How do we, as a CFO, the role is to essentially make sure that you recognize this and also sort of invest time and resources behind that. That's another key trend that is emerging. And third thing I would say is about the liquidity. So while we know that we are seeing some kind of traction in the market with the economy opening up and with good prospects for India in the coming year, we also are cautiously optimistic in terms of what will happen and how and in what form, what changes are going to be seen in the marketplace. So keeping your liquidity quotient high is continuing to be a priority. And also making sure that you are not probably undoing some of those measures which you implemented rightly last year while you did it under a lot of stress. You are able to plan and execute a lot of those liquidity measures in a much more cohesive way in the coming year. That's another thing. The learnings of this bad year is something that's going to be there with us for a very long time, and that in turn is creating a lot of prudence and discipline on the liquidity front. And the other important aspect that we are seeing is in terms of the opportunities that are available in the market. There are many new opportunities that we are seeing in the market. One immediate impact of COVID is a lot of brands which were strong have emerged stronger, which in turn would mean that you are in a better position to look at your marketplace and wanted to be at a place where you thought you wanted to be, but you could never be there. Because the competition among brands that actually are doing very well and are financially and otherwise very strong, that competition has intensified. So to a large extent, while you have more opportunities in the marketplace, whether it is about retail space acquisition or about acquiring new customers or about bettering the experience or about having quality spaces, so many opportunities are there. So are you able to invest ahead of curve and make sure that you're able to gather some of those assets that you could not for a long time? So now some of those assets are available. So going behind that and making sure that you're able to channelize your investments towards that is another important priority that companies would be looking at. So altogether, this is a year where you actually reflect on some of the learnings that you had of last year. At the same time, you are going to look at how the profitability of each of your small segments of business is going to be in the next year, given that you have been able to do a bit of reset post-pandemic, and then making sure that you are investing behind the right things in this year so that you are actually able to grow faster and grow better and win the marketplace. So this is the kind of trend that I'm seeing, and this is where a lot of time and resources would be sort of put into, as far as my thinking is concerned.
Thanks, Tarun. And I agree with a lot of these points. I think the most important part is that while conservation is required when businesses hit a period of turmoil, But the only way you can get back to growth is also to be able to take those decisions selectively and look towards investing right towards the growth. And I think that's what is the most interesting part of what a CFO and what a business leader has to balance for this year. Next, I have Mr. Venkateselu P. Venkat sir, if you could introduce yourself and also talk about some of the priorities for Trent and Tata Group businesses across multiple formats of retail this year.
Thank you, Saurabh. Good evening to everyone. I'm the Executive Director of Finance for Trent and look at finance and a few other functions. In many ways, I quite like the articulation, Saurabh, that you started with, and this whole, focus on liquidity, profitability, and growth, probably in that kind of, in the same order, has been something which has been clearly on radar for many of us, and actually most of us, and in many ways it continues to be on radar as we kind of get into 21-22. That said, I would like to add a few points which are kind of priorities for some of our businesses, and we think growth is periods of disruptions are also periods of significant periods of opportunity when we look back. So possibly this COVID-related disruption, which is continuing in parts, in the way things are playing out, because we're still not out of it entirely, we believe could turn out to be a significant period to double down on certain priorities on the growth front. So on certain of the growth initiatives across some of the businesses, we are actually putting more bets down now. And the fact that Q3 onwards, we have all seen much better consumer traction, and there has been quite a bit of liquidity come back into the overall ecosystem, is giving us a little more confidence that this is the direction to play. The second one, I think it was Arun who spoke about it, is a focus on the customer. And there is something that's happening, we see both on the tech front, which I guess is clearly, I think it was Karunakaran who mentioned that e-commerce has really been strong for most of us, relative to, in our case, a very small base. It has been growing at a clip, and I guess it's been growing at a strong clip for many of the retail formats and brands. The other side to it is the non-metro markets. So there is a choice to make on where do we go, and one is the customer, the trend around the customer wanting the convenience. The other is the trend around non-metro markets being a significant growth driver to focus on and prioritize to kind of look when we look at FY 21-22. The third piece I would pick is a learning from FY 2021 for us. It has been clearly getting more of our costs to be variable. Reducing operating leverage has, was always on the radar at some level, but I think it's been significantly spotlighted by what happened in the recent quarters. And therefore, there is this clear intent to say, can we kind of move the business model itself over time to be a lot more flexible, so which will allow us to kind of make life a lot more easier if there was shocks that we experience going forward. So those are broadly 3-4 things that I thought we could add, Saurabh, in addition to some of the very good points that were made by friends and colleagues around this table.
Thanks, Venkat. And I think one piece that obviously comes to mind when we talk about Trent, especially in the month of January, February, is that the trend in the share price, we hope, is not just an indicator for the company, but for the larger industry as we go forward into this year. And I think as a business which touches consumer and almost each and every consumer in the country and across the world, it's obviously very important, and both for the companies which are listed and as well as the other stakeholders that touch your businesses in various ways. Thanks everyone. Thanks for the introduction and giving us a sense of your priorities for this year. I would just tweak the topic, and I think we did talk about preserving liquidity, we did talk about growth, but my next question is something which obviously is something that businesses are not always very keen to talk about. I would still want to put it in front of you, is about the cost cutting. How important will cost cutting be as a indicator and as a decision making point for this year? And is it going to dominate all decisions for you going forward in this year? So maybe I could start in the same order with Arun and then move across the panel.
Saurav, and last year when the pandemic struck, that's what I think all speakers said, that we almost sieved the entire cost elements, figured out wherever that we can save everything. And I think to a greater extent, almost every retailer has gone and seen where all the cost reductions that can happen and have done. So I'm not too sure that whether going forward there can be further cutting. I would be grateful that if I could maintain the same level of costs at the higher volume that we are going to do. So it's like, one is that, okay, you've trimmed it down a bit, but don't allow it to balloon and become bigger. So that's where the focus to me would be going to. I think going on further cutting down cost would be like, maybe I think to me would be a very, very difficult thing. Wherever is possible, yes, but it's not going to be a very, very easier option to go further, find some ways and to reduce cost. It can be here and there. Yes, there will be some bits and pieces of cost that you can further trim down, but not at a wholesale level that we did last year. And I think the major focus would be to see that, where is that you don't allow it to grow further, because as the moment business grows, it's always going to be that your capacity to spend then further goes up, and then the demand starts happening that, okay, now the business is increasing, so the cost needs to go up. So I think if we are able to control the cost at this level, and that is where it will help you in terms of both liquidity and profitability when the growth happens, is say that, okay, the costs are still controlled, and obviously even if you don't get back to those levels, the higher levels which we anticipate, but at least with the lower cost, your profitability will help and it will further help you to grow further. I think that's how I would see it.
Got it. No, I think you're right. I think obviously when we started hearing from retailers, the moment the pandemic hit, there was a lot of talk about real estate prices, and I think we had a sea change in terms of how a lot of these costs across malls and other even high street is now priced. It's a very success driven model now. And I think from a perspective of also as the panelists have been talking in other discussions as well, a lot of cost cutting in businesses across employees, across various parts of the businesses have already taken place. But thanks, Arun. I think that's always positive to hear that businesses are going to invest selectively into growth. Vidya, if I could tweak the question a bit, and I know Bata has been talking about expansion into tier 2, tier 3, and if I watch my news correctly, I think there's a talk about expanding multiple stores over this year and maybe the next year as well. What's your take in terms of managing the cost element or cost cutting element with this growth that you would want to have as a business in this year?
No, as Arun mentioned, I think the lessons of last year will continue to resonate with the business for, several more years, not just us, but everybody else. So those are fundamentals, I think, to some extent. That doesn't mean that you can't grow wherever applicable, wherever possible, wherever the opportunities are. They are not, according to me, kind of divorced from each other. It is just, can we become efficient? Can we even do the growth a little more efficiently? So those kind of things are the questions that will, I think we will grapple with, right? So the lessons of efficiency, the lessons of prudence, the lessons of liquidity control, all those things will continue. But that doesn't mean that the business priorities won't happen. Those things will happen, but with learnings from the past, which kind of continue into those aspects. So that's how I'd like to see it, because I think these are fundamental lessons, which I think, we learned them the hard way, but so we shouldn't, and therefore it has to continue, right?
No, absolutely. And I think that's obviously a cautiously positive and optimistic sentiment is something that's always good to hear in terms of how businesses are going to look at this year. Next, if I could ask Karuna sir, and I know from a perspective of the company, there's a lot of effort that you have made into investments in technology, right? From the projects around Trishul as well as Everest. So if you could maybe share some insights on how do you look at investing into technology and at the same time managing your cost meetings and your overall profitability as a company?
Thanks, Arun. Thanks for that question. I mean, just go back, like for example, I think both Arun and Vidya said that, like the opportunities what we had on realigning the cost this year is something tremendous. I mean, if this not happened, probably we would not have reset the cost as we have done today. So it gave an excellent opportunity. It also gave an excellent opportunity to, even as a finance leaders, to think about what's important and what are the costs we need and what are the things, like as Venkat said, how can we variabilize the overall cost? Okay, that's one part. Answering the second question, yeah, Trishul and Everest, again, I just spoke when I started. I mean, it's primarily on the e-com. Most of the offline retailers who are here right now, we weren't aware that what we can do on e-com. I mean, we all thought we are a predominantly an offline player. So what, again, this pandemic helped us is there is a tremendous, what you call brand recall for each and every one. I mean, be it Bata, be it Trent or Levi's, like there is a tremendous brand recall among the customer. And to that extent, it also helped us having a strong base to start with. I mean, it's not that something I'm going to talk about Shoppers Stop to customers right now. Okay, so that's advantage we had. I mean, each and every retail player we had. Having said that, we focused more on offline until now. We did not focus on the online. So the Project Trishul and Project Everest helped us to achieve the scale what we want in e-com, to have an excellent, strong base, whatever is the tech issues, how can we resolve those tech issues? How can we improve the overall customer journey in the omni-channel? So those are the things that help us a lot. Trishul, we have already completed. We have completed by November and we are starting with the Everest right now. See, both the journeys, the ROI is going to be tremendous. I mean, I'm not going to measure the ROI within 3 months or 6 months. I mean, it's going to be, slightly longer period. So to that extent, it's going to help us a lot. I'm sorry about that. Answering the other tech cost, in fact, during the pandemic, we are the first retail company to go live on SAP S/4HANA. I mean, in the month of June, completely offline, we went SAP S/4HANA live, and that too, most of the streams are online right now. Phase 1 has been already completed. Phase 2 is primarily on buying and merchandise. So we have completed. So these are, tech costs. This decision was taken even before the pandemic has happened. So I can't take credit for saying that this is what has happened during the pandemic. But the decision has been taken, and only thing is COVID slightly deferred the implementation. Okay. Again, coming back to your question, I mean, tech is extremely critical, particularly if you want to improve the overall e-commerce, and particularly if you want to improve the overall customer journey. It's very, very critical. And if you want to increase the overall share, be it UI, user interface or user experience. So we are investing heavily on that, and we can see the results even in the shortest period. Like some of the numbers are in the public domain right now. From 1.5% of the revenue, we are talking about 6%, and that is in the first 6 months itself. So that's the results we could see there.
Thanks, Karuna sir. I don't know if I could understand from your perspective, and Levi's as a brand obviously comes in with its premium branding strategy. I know that while you have also tried to consolidate stores, but at the same time now you're trying to expand the store size or probably the experience that comes to the consumers. So from your perspective, knowing what your brand represents, how does cost come into play, and how do you see that going into 2021 in terms of managing your profitability, managing your brand image as well?
Yeah, sure. So 2020 was all about cost productivity. And when I say cost productivity, I mean, how do I ensure that I'll only have those costs that are working as far as my business is concerned. Since business went into a downside, we obviously looked at costs and wanted to make sure that we don't have costs that are not sort of driving the outcome of the business. So it was more like a need to have kind of environment when it came to cost last year. Now, come 2021, we are seeing a lot of positivity all around, and it's important that while we carry the learnings of last year in terms of the approach that we have on costs, we are not looking at costs with the same lens as what we looked at 8-9 months back. Now it's all about driving efficiencies without actually letting go any of the things that you have already achieved. You are actually looking at costs as a very important driver to sort of go behind and get growth. So cost in my mind is a function of your appetite to growth, right? So if you really want to grow faster, then you cannot look at cost then cost is an opportunity. You're able to make that investments, and then you capture that customer and that market and that particular segment, and thereafter add it to your business. So that's the kind of approach that we are looking at when it comes to cost now. Use that very purposefully, not let go any of the efficiencies that you've already got. At the same time, use that as a very important tool or vehicle to get to the growth path. Given that all of us are very optimistic about how discretionary spends are going to probably become better in the next 6, 7, 8 months. So given that overall guidance, going behind and making the right choices on how you want to spend it, how you want to spend and how you want to invest to get to that growth is something that is coming as a top priority for us.
Got it. Thanks, Arun. Venkat, if I could understand maybe from a slightly different perspective, I think we all know that in the last few years we have seen tremendous success in terms of expansion with Zudio bringing in many more stores. Westside has obviously had a lot of focus on private labels. Now, when you run a business which is very strong on private labels vis-a-vis selling other brands, how does that help you as a company? And I know COVID was an unknown, but how do you see that helping you and also preparing you to be able to show growth on the backing of your private labels, as well as the already large expansion that has happened in the last couple of years in this year and maybe even the next year?
Thank you, Saurabh. In many ways, Saurabh, the being primarily led by private labels or own brands gives some clear advantages, but also brings with it several challenges, because you have a lot more fixed costs that are sitting inside, within the company, or which you incur in your P&L, vis-a-vis somebody who is curating a bunch of strong brands. So to that extent, it's a fine balance of saying how do you manage the operating leverage that comes with a higher proportion of own brands without, and to keep the advantages but kind of mitigate the downsides from it. So one of the things that we have tried to do in this context, Saurabh, is as far as the property portfolio is concerned, we have moved a lot of it to share some of the upside and downside with our property partners. So that's kind of mitigated some of the operating leverage that comes from a far higher fixed cost base that we have as primarily own branded player. The other side is been very again, coming from a property side of things to mitigate risks, been very careful about the amount of footage that we take in an individual store. We've been far more willing, Saurabh, to add number of stores rather than have large stores. So what happens is the incremental square foot, at least in our case, and I guess it's probably true in some of the other successful players around the table, is that the incremental footage in a given store may not necessarily deliver the same level of sales throughput that you require to kind of keep the store very healthy from a financial perspective. So it's helped to keep footprints tight, drive higher sales velocities in the same amount of footprint, And if you feel that the density is high, rather double down with additional separate stores in the proximity or in the same micro market, rather than having a higher square foot store, an individual store. The third part of it, you spoke about expansion, Saurabh. In many ways, we believe being primarily private label or own branded actually means that you have incurred most of the fixed costs. And if you have a certain level of customer traction and salience, it really helps to have a bigger estate. So so long as the quality of the estate is good, if you are a own branded player, it helps to have more estate than less estate, because you're reaching a much wider audience. And broadly speaking, what has worked for us, and I'm sharing with you because it's primarily in the public domain, and we have spoken of multiple times to investor community, is we use 3 broad filters for stores. One, we want it to be in a micro market which is attractive. Second, we want the building scheme to be interesting. For instance, we do not want a 4-floor store. We don't want a 3-floor store with a footprint of 3,000 square feet on each floor. We want a certain minimum level of height in each floor. So this more building scheme related stuff. And the third piece is, if the first 2 conditions are met, you still want the economics to work. Now, if we can tick box all 3, it makes the store so much more viable. If you kind of follow a certain discipline. So we've not been very, completely successful, but we've been trying to get to a place where we can grow our portfolio faster rather than slower, and at the same time continue to emphasize a bit on the lines of what Arun and I guess Karuna mentioned, of saying get more and more digital with everything that we do. We think of digital broadly in 3 bundles. One is around the process bundle. So for instance, HANA is clearly something on the agenda, and we'll probably get to be live sooner than later. The second bundle is around the communication, how you touch your customers and your stakeholders. And the third bundle is commerce. So while commerce is important, it's not the only thing that's digital as far as the ecosystem is concerned. So in many ways, that's how we're looking at it. We think the market opportunity that India offers, despite all its challenges, is quite enticing.
Thanks, Venkat. I think that's very insightful to understand how do you manage several of these levers to manage optimistic expansion, manage growth, manage cost effectiveness, all at the same time. And I think that's what creates a CFO or a finance leader's job as more interesting and more strategic as we go into this year.
It's a very challenging periods are always, I think probably brings a lot of interesting opportunities for folks especially in the finance space, because you get to see the whole spectrum of the business, I presume, Saurabh. So yes, it's been an interesting period.
Yeah, great. Arun, so as a company which touches retailers and supply chain partners very extensively, and from our own experience, when the pandemic hit across India and as well as the world, a lot of concerns and demand came from suppliers, and there were obviously many discussions around their ability to survive the pandemic. And I think how you manage the liquidity expectations of your supply chain at the same time managing those costs and credit periods is what became very important for companies, because you had to manage costs, but you also had to ensure that your suppliers continue to function. And we had some bit of working with many corporates in the larger industry as well as retail on those terms. As a brand, you obviously are at the forefront of talking about supply chain sustainability, because you also touch a lot of vulnerable supplier segments. How do you see the supply chain and sustainability as key focus areas, and what are some of the things that you have done to be able to support them through this period and hopefully towards growth in the next few months?
See, when it came to, so how we saw was 2 pillars. One was the employees and the other was the suppliers. Okay, so both of those guys, fuel the business. And in both the cases, what we did was constant communication. Obviously, there were liquidity concerns, and it was not that we had funds to just pay them off. But there was always a constant communication with them, and also a constant, as and when, it's not that there was a full stop on payments to them. There was always some bit of planning which we gave it to them, that this is how we plan to execute your payments, because when the COVID struck, nobody knew as to how long this is going to happen and when you would not be there. So rather, when the e-commerce was opened, and once you start seeing some credit in the bank account, is where we all had a bit of sigh of relief that some money has just come into the account. So otherwise, for a month, there was no credits in the bank statement at all. So there's a constant communication with the suppliers to say that, these are how you're planning to pay off your liabilities. And as it came at a time where, your entire supplies for spring, summer was in the system. So it was like the money was there, and the materials were there, and the money was due. And you had no choice but to, there was no option to cancel or anything. So there were dues, and over a period of 3-4 months, we kept on paying them. There was planning and assurance given to them at the beginning of every month that this is the amount of payment that we would make to you, and that's how we did. And when it came to sustainability, so our discussion with some of our vendors were that, okay, we will take care of if there are any concerns or anything in case of COVID in your business or your employees, we'll take care of you separately. So there were some cases where we had funded them initially in advance as well to take care of their requirements, so that we kept them as a partner. They were not seen as a supplier. They were seen as similar to an employee. That's how where we saw them. And that constant communication helped by ensuring that somewhere by end of October, all the suppliers were paid and all the dues got cleared. And they were also satisfied, because end of the day for them is like the moment there is some clarity as to when it is going to come. And if week after week you are honoring that commitment, then obviously there is some bit of confirmation which they also get a fact that yes, because they also understand the situation that everybody is in. There have been a few companies who were sitting on huge piles of cash, so they were able to manage and make the payments directly. But majority of the companies had to go through this grind, and we were also one of them. So I see that it's more of partnering with them. So that's what we call everybody a business partners. So it's more of partnering with them and seeing that their problem is also understood, and they also understand our problems. I think that's how we overcame this issue.
Thanks, Arun. With that, we could understand your take on supplier partners as a business, and if you could also add an insight into how you see the distribution channel as a key part of that journey as well, not just the supplier side, but also the distribution side.
Right. I think obviously it was a challenging environment from a customer, from a channel partner kind of a situation. And I think, for us, and my experience in the past as well, what has turned to be the key is what I think was alluded to a little earlier, which is constant communication. I think we need to kind of, at this point in time, especially because a lot of people were struggling all through the chain, it was very important to kind of take a very, to have very, very close communication on an ongoing basis to see what their cash flows are. And the closer you are to the channel partner, to the customer, the closer you understand the exact cash flow, the challenges they are going through, and then to ensure that, they prioritize you as soon as they see a bit of improvement that is happening. I think the other piece that is very important is also to kind of also take a slightly longer term view of the relationship, because I think a lot of our relationships are long term in nature. There are many, many multiple years where you've interacted with the same person. And I think that gives a certain sense of we are in it together, rather than, they are kind of outside our ecosystem and outside our, so whether it be supplier, channel partner, customer, whoever be the entity involved, I think relationship, see, I for all the professionalism that all of us talk about, I think India as a country, we still remember the people who stayed with us during the tough times. And this is one of the times which are tough times. And I think adopting an approach where, everybody is very clear about what the other person is going through, communicating, being in it together, those are tenets that I think it's you learn from childhood, but this actually gives you a sense of demonstrating it in practice. I think having a non-transactional view of the relationship is very important.
Absolutely, very well said. I think the times that we saw in the last about 11 months is what has brought businesses together in terms of all stakeholders. And I believe that even though we were away from the stores for very long, it brought us closer because the stores did reach out to us across categories. And I, personally, have seen some of those experiences of having WhatsApp calls to the stores coming and delivering products to us. And I think some of those relationships that have been built, I think also would stand the test of time in terms of how people would remember these times and hopefully grow together and get out of this period of the COVID pandemic, as well as slightly slower growth as we look at the next couple of years.
If I can just add one more thing, I think even with, one point I should say, talking about relationships, even through the RAI Finance Forum, the number of CFOs who've kind of, that I never used to have conversations with so many people, excepting, during the last year, even competitors, CFOs of competitors, CFOs of other companies, who kind of lent a helping hand in terms of experiences that they're going through. So it's that way that is a good one silver lining from the whole pandemic for me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's something that we have. I think it's also been an experience where across industries, across functions, people have had much more interaction. I think incidentally and surprisingly, Zoom calls and virtual calls brought us more into in face to face compared to even the physical world. But having said that, I would obviously love to get back in a full force without having that mask on my face or in my pocket. Hopefully by the time this year ends and the next event with RLS would actually be in face to face, with the risk of running late. I'm fine, okay with that, so long as I get to meet people.
It's a product category for some of us, so don't push away masks.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we'll keep it for the pollution bit that doesn't go away. So. We also had quite a few audience questions, so maybe with the remaining panelists, also to be mindful of the time, I'll probably put some questions in front of you. So Arun, if you could talk about the shop floor experience and how as a business you keep the morale high in these times, if you could share some insights on that.
Post-pandemic, what has happened is you are actually seeing lesser number of consumers walking into your store. But at the same time, these are consumers who are serious purchasers. They are out there because they really want to buy something. So what is important is the person at the shop will have to be extremely diligent in terms of being able to address the requirement of that particular customer who is out there to buy. So the first and primary focus has been to educate our shop floor people as to what is going to change. You will have less number of consumers coming, your transaction values could be higher, and you have to be able to engage in a manner that you are able to convert that into a higher transaction value and things like that. At the same time, it was important to give that personal attention that the customer wants, given that he's out there to go ahead and really make that choice. So our staff were clearly trained on how to really serve that customer so that he's able to get the right kind of answers for all the questions that he has in mind, which in turn would help him to sort of navigate and move to that order where he can make that choice. So it was important to keep the motivation levels of the staff at the highest level. On the one hand, they are seeing that their store numbers are lower. At the other hand, they are seeing that every customer is more important than what it was earlier. So having a very robust incentive policy, and at the same time giving all the required things to make sure that we are truly concerned about the safety of our staff. These were the two important things that were coming out. The company that is really taking care of the welfare of the staff as well as their family in terms of the social distancing, the expectations, and various other things that they need. At the same time, having an incentive policy which would sort of motivate them to go that extra mile to make sure that every customer is out there to shop. So these were the two important things that could drive the right outcome during this period.
No, you're right. I think window shopping, and I know personally what that means in terms of looking at multiple stores and then deciding what maybe to buy from one of the stores. I think the consumers now are more serious when they get out, and when I have personally gone out now, I know what to buy. I've probably done my bit of due diligence. I may still go to the store, though e-commerce, initially obviously it was e-commerce, but I think all of us now, when we walk into a store, we know what we want to buy. We spend a bit of time there. We talk, and I think personally, I have actually responded to more surveys now. So businesses have asked, about the experience to brands, which I never thought I would ever have to explain, because those are brands which I probably carry from my younger days. But I think I mean, if somebody comes back and they says, how was the experience? I am now more proactive in answering those questions. So I think both the consumers and brands have started listening more to each other. And I think that relationship will continue to grow and more. Karuna sir, if I could, maybe understand from your perspective, how do you see the new consumer as different? And I think you talked about e-commerce being something which was a new foray for you during this period. So how do you see the new consumer as different? And do you think that we really know the new consumer and are able to zero in on what they want and how to deliver that to them?
Saurabh, Arun partly answered that. I mean, on the specifically on the new consumer, what we have seen is, unlike in the past, they know what they're going to buy, and particularly if I take my own experience, like in Shoppers Stop, we have huge stores, somewhere between 40,000 to 50,000. We have seen in the initial days, customer coming and spending probably an hour coming with the family and spending an hour. Now they know what they need, and they're very specific when they come here. In addition to that, what also happens is we have something called WhatsApp video selling. I mean, they see the product even before they come in. Second, they also verify the prices online before they come to the store. What is the price that is being offered in the online? What is the price that is being offered in the offline? So what we have seen is the customer is a lot more informed today on the product specs, on the price, and all the other features before he comes to the store. So that's, I would not say that keeps us on the toes, but as Arun rightly said, it gives us an opportunity for us to serve them better. I mean, we also have to be completely, we also know about what the customer needs, and then we have to update them, and we have to give the product or the service what they ask for. That's one. Second one, I mean, I'm a bit, when we say the new consumer, in the e-com, what we have seen is, we have seen a lot of the new, between 18 and 25, they are coming and placing an order. Again, what we have seen is the shift in the product segment. I mean, for them, what is the discount that is being offered in the, or what is the price differential that is available? So those are the ones which probably, as a hardcore offline player, would not have bothered much. Yeah, that's one that is also coming up in now. Okay, these are the 2 or 3 things we found the new consumer.
Thanks, Karuna. Venkat, maybe from your perspective, knowing that you sell multiple product categories, what's your take on the consumer, and is there any common insights across the multiple products and formats that you see that is something that businesses should keep in mind when we interact with consumers in this year?
I guess this is in addition to some of the very interesting comments that Karuna had, Saurabh, on the so to speak, the new consumer. One of the things that we see, which is quite stark, is there is a lot of traction at the value side of the equation, and there is a reasonably comfortable traction on if you offer something premium, and if it is strongly differentiated, there is a strong amount of traction. But if you're caught in the middle and if the differentiation is not very sharp, the customer, really is far more tepid in terms of whether you get the critical mass of traction that you need for a business to kind of make it viable, not only viable from a perspective of breaking even, but also viable from a economic perspective, where you get a reasonable amount of return on investment. So I guess that is increasingly becoming a strong trend, maybe not even in India. If you look at it globally, either you're the really successful players in the brand/retail space are either players who have strong value propositions, or on the other spectrum of luxury, premium, bridge to luxury kind of space. Many of them are very successful. But if you're caught in the middle, where the differentiation, the customer proposition, the relevance is a bit more, quote unquote, in the customer mind iffy, both the economics and the survivability of those brands have been far more under question. So that's one important theme that we see. And the other piece that we see is very clearly, and this is why I'm sharing it from a trend perspective, and I've heard a few friends from the wider ecosystem also mention this, very clearly the customer is willing to spend on full price, provided the proposition is compelling and the proposition is fresh. Junk at junk prices is not something the customers appreciate. So I guess there is a lot of value in getting, as retailers, as brands, I guess being fresh, I guess is something which the customer really wants. And if it is fresh and if it is relevant, she's willing to pay a full price. I guess that augurs very well for many of us around this table. And in many ways, it warrants that, wherever we need a cleanup, all of us included, I presume, definitely I can speak for our businesses. We need to be a little more ruthless in cutting the tail and getting rid of residuals than possibly we've been in the past. So those are two other pieces I'd add to what the panelists said earlier.
No, thanks, Venkat. I think very well said. I think we're now close to the end of our session. I just have the one last question. I'm happy for anyone in the audience to pick that up. What do you think as an industry, the industry should try to achieve together, whether from a perspective of policy, from a perspective of how businesses collaborate together? Happy to hear anyone's thoughts on that, and then we can probably close the session. Vidya, would you want to pick that up? Or maybe just share your insights on how the industry can work together to achieve common goals?
See, I think with RAI, through the CFO forum that RAI has set up, that already is a very good forum. And I'm hoping that, and I think it's a pretty active forum, especially because there are so many local level laws, regulations, changes, etc., which our businesses expect us to kind of advise them on. And it's actually been extremely useful for me to have a helping hand where we can pose these questions, and maybe somebody who's headquartered in a particular state, if there's a changing state regulation or something like that, there are always people willing to share insights. I think having that forum has been extremely helpful, and maybe, continuing that, and maybe having an occasion to have maybe once a quarter kind of conversations in that forum is a good mechanism for us to be able to coordinate. And I think I personally see multiple areas. One, of course, we are basically keeping ourselves abreast of both local news as well as changes or notifications which have implications on our business, changes in tax which have implication on our business. But I can actually see a longer term kind of a professional association that can come out of this. So I think that's where I see the collaboration going.
No, absolutely. And I think, that I think also takes me on to my note of thanks and thanks to RAI team. And I think the last 1 year has been very insightful in terms of how the industry got everybody together, talking about common concerns. I remember sessions where we had retailers and brands coming together, talking about cost, talking about how to restart. And I think that's the forums like these also provide a lot of insights in terms of what are the common goals, what are the common challenges. What I could pick from this session, and obviously, as I said in the beginning, I am an optimist. So while liquidity, capital, and cost will remain a concern. But I'm happy to hear that the reduction in cost, reduction in terms of scaling down businesses is now a thing of the past. This year will be a year looking towards growth, looking towards going back to the numbers of pre-COVID, and also looking at strategically and selectively taking decisions which can take the companies, the brands, as well as the overall industry back to its heydays and maybe even beyond. So with that, thank you panelists, thank you RAI team, thank you audience for keeping it interactive and asking questions. Back to you, back to RAI team, and maybe for a note of thanks.